Now, a couple of videos ago, I was fishing on Town Creek here in Western Maryland, using a new hopper pattern just for some smallmouth and panfish, and it did well enough that a few of you asked me to tie it for the channel. Now, there is nothing fancy about this thing. In fact, it's actually a little bit shaggy, but where it differs from most hoppers is that the foam body I'm wrapping up through it instead of just tying it over the top, which makes it a little bit easier to palmer a hackle up through it, and hence it's a little bit shaggier and why I'm calling it a fuzzy hopper. So I think this is going to be a pretty good fly for warm water, bass and panfish, maybe some ponds, but I also used it on the Savage River last week in faster, colder water, you know, classic trout water. Now it floats pretty well, but not real high. And I did use it on the Savage the other day with a pretty heavy nymph dropper on it, and in moderate current it did sink a little bit. But the good thing about it, with this big hair wing on it, even when it had sunken maybe a foot or so, I could still see it and it was still pretty useful as a strike indicator. So it's a pretty easy pattern to fish, but it's also a pretty easy and fun one to tie. So there it is in the vise, probably the shaggiest hopper you're ever gonna see on here. But it's a fun one to tie and has worked pretty well for me. Now I've tied these on 6s and 8s. This is a size 8. Let's pinch that barb. It's a 3 extra long curve shank hook. Certainly don't need to use curve shank, but I kind of like these for my hoppers. And I'm going to use black thread. You could try to match the thread to your body color, but I don't think it's a big deal and hasn't made a bit of difference as far as I can tell. So catch that in almost to the point of the hook, I guess. And now I've taken 2mm foam and I've tried to cut a 2mm slip. You see that cross section? It's almost a square. Not entirely, but pretty close. And I'll catch it in back here. I'm leaving a little nub right there, and I'm going to use that nub to really anchor this thread in, or the foam in. And now, just going to fold it over, create a big old butt. Yeah, everybody likes a big old butt. Certainly those smallmouths I was using this on last week, they couldn't leave it alone. All right, so several wraps to lock that in. And now, just some Grizzly hackle. I think you could probably use any hackle you want. I'm using a Grizzly, and this is a dry fly hackle, but it's not my good stuff. So I wouldn't use a real good feather here. It's kind of the same principle as a woolly bugger, just a palmered hackle. All right, so take our thread up, you know, several eye lengths back, because we are going to fold over a head up front. Now before we wrap this feather here, we're going to wrap this foam up. And here's a tip: you can pull it really tight and get a pretty flat body, or you can not pull it as tight and you'll have a little bit fatter of a body. So just somewhere in between, I think, works pretty well. And I'm not necessarily going to overlap these. They might a little, but that's not really on purpose. It's just trying to get a kind of fat foam body right there. All right, now with it up here, I'm going to take 2 or 3 wraps, and not real tight at first. You don't want the thread to cut your foam. So we got a few wraps right there, and this foam is starting to spin around a little bit on me. So what I'm going to do, just try to pinch it up here and then create a little flat spot, and we can use this to catch in our deer hair. So just like that little nub we had in the back, we'll anchor it with that right there, and hopefully that'll keep that from spinning around. And now we're just going to palmer this hackle up, and I've been keeping it in these natural gaps from that wrapping that foam, and that will, you know, you'll need 4 or 5 wraps right here, and it's just going to give you a fairly fuzzy body. So we'll catch this feather off with 2 or 3 wraps up here. And now just a tuft of natural deer or elk. And totally up to you how much hair you want to use here. I've been using a fairly sparse tuft here, and I'm not stacking it, but if I have anything really long, I might just pull them out with my fingers. And then I will roll it around my fingers, just try to, you know, get them going every which way. And I'm going to catch them in just a little bit longer than that butt right there. All right, so I'll do a couple of loose wraps and then take a look. All right, I do want them kind of laying flat, but they might flare up a little bit on you, especially after you've put a couple of tighter wraps. Okay, still got my foam coming off the top up there and haven't let go of the back. Now I'm going to trim all this excess right here. And I'm not cutting this absolutely as close as I can get it, but I'm cutting it pretty short. And I'll show you why in just a second. So it's not going to be real pretty with those nubs sticking up, but what it will be is a lot more durable. So just kind of take a few thread wraps right up through there and just kind of lock that in. And I've had some of these catch quite a few fish and none of this hair is pulled out, you know, as far as I know. And now's when I put in the rubber legs. Just really anything you want. I'm going with an olive because why not? But you could use a contrasting color here if you want. I don't think it matters too much. Brown would probably work. So 2 or 3 wraps to just kind of lay that in place right there on top. Make sure you got them where you want them. Now I'm going to open this front one up and fold over this foam. Create a little hopper head right here. Not real big, but you know, not insignificant either. And then I'll do a couple of loose medium wraps, and then after I've gotten several wraps down, I can put several more. And this is why you might have wanted to use the thread color of your body, because you're going to see that little black right there. But again, I don't think it makes a bit of difference. And I'm going to whip finish it right here in the back of this head. Now I snip this excess foam right here, just fairly short right there, and then trim your legs to size. And I like my back ones just a little bit longer than the front ones. So the back one's there about to the back of that body, and then the front one's maybe just a little bit shorter up here. So there you go, shaggy little hopper. And if you wanted to put head cement on it, just flip it upside down, put a drop right there on those thread wraps. But a super simple tie, surprisingly, has been a pretty effective one for me. So I appreciate you watching, everybody. Y'all take care, and we'll see you next time.